So I'm Navendu, and let's kick off this session with some numbers. So 80% of maintainers need help in finding and recruiting new contributors, and 92% of employers say that finding talent with open source skill is quite difficult. And 52% of developers haven't contributed to open source yet, but they want to. And 33% of them don't know where to start, and 31% think they aren't skilled enough. So a little bit about me. I'm a full-time open source developer. I maintain Meshery and Service Mesh performance at Cloud Native Computing Foundation. And I also try to help students and new developers make their way into open source through Google Summer of Code and the LFX mentorship program. So let's start this by asking why you should contribute to open source. And I think this is an important question. You need to set your motivations straight before you dive into open source. So why? Uh, a definite answer is that you can improve your coding skills. So in open source project, you can see the entire source code uh, in your computer, and looking through code is the best way to learn what is happening. You will have a tangible product you can work with, but you also get to see what's under the hood. So you get to work with projects that may be in your area of interest, and you'll get to learn and understand how this works. So contributing to open source will definitely improve your skill set, and it will help you gain real world experience. So if you are a student or if you are a new developer who doesn't have an actual industry experience, so open source, contributing to open source can help you get that experience. Most of the open source projects are used widely, so you will have a project that has a lot of users, and this project will be something that a real world software project will have. So you get to write code, you get to manage the project, you learn how you can work within teams, and you learn how to manage a particular project, and you learn to do all those stuff. You learn the process and you learn the tools. Another important benefit of contributing to open source is you gain recognition. So if you are within the JavaScript community, and if you are contributing to some JavaScript projects, you you will attract a reputation. You will gain, and you will gain recognition. So based on your open source contribution, you will be known within the community. You will be known as a leader, uh, or as a leader within that particular community, and this can definitely help with your personal brand, or the image the image people have on you. And with this recognition, what you can do is you can build your network. So you will get connected with people contributing to open source, and so there will definitely open source projects revolve around open source communities, and people who are engaged in the community actively communicate and collaborate. This can help you build networks that span countries and continents. And with your new network, you can find a lot of new opportunities. So open source projects are getting a lot of capital funding right now, and it is becoming sustainable to work in open source. And I myself work full time in open source, and I get a sustainable source of income as well. So working in open source is more sustainable these days, and you can find a lot of new opportunities. So this can come as uh, new jobs. You can get internship opportunities. You can, like, if your open source project has a lot of traction, this can lead to maybe a business or a paid software that you can build on top of your open source offering. So all those things uh, boils down to you having new opportunities to try new things. And these new opportunities also come from the fact that you can uh, you improve your skills, and these skills can translate to new opportunities as well. So how do you start contributing to open source? What do you need to know, and like, is there a process that you can follow to start contributing? So this is how I started, and uh, how I tell many others to start contributing to open source. So, and this is especially true if you are a student or a new developer. You will have a lot of personal projects. So you learn programming by building projects, and to start contributing to open source, you can make these projects open source by you can just push them to your GitHub or your GitLab account, and uh, write a readme, and like just put it out so that people around the world can come and see. They don't necessarily have to use it, they necessarily don't have to find value within your project, but uh, make it a habit to open source your personal projects. And this also helps to build your portfolio. So when you are looking for a job as a new developer or a student, you can use this showcase your projects on these platforms as part of your personal portfolio. So if you build a UI, if you are learning a front end framework like React, and you are building a UI, you can just open source it. Maybe people will find that helpful, and maybe they can use it for their projects. Or if you are building a project and you required a small you required a s- you are required to build a small library or a framework, you can open source it. uh, People will definitely There will definitely be people who have the same problem as you, who can use it to solve their problem. And you don't necessarily have to contribute code or build projects. So if you have notes that you have taken while you are learning a new technology or something else, you can open source it. You can create a repo, and you can document your learnings and share the resources you have found, so that other people can come in and contribute to and can learn from your experience. And another important thing to learn when you are starting to contribute to open source is learning the tools. So there are definitely a lot of tools that open source projects regularly use, and the most important ones being Git and GitHub, or GitLab, or any other version control system. So uh, people use Git to work collaboratively, and platforms like GitHub can be used to host open source projects where people can come in and collaborate and communicate over the project, over the code. So uh, once you start adopting the process of open sourcing your projects, open sourcing your personal projects, you will come to terms with how Git and GitHub works, and you will learn more of that eventually. And while working on open source, an important thing you can do is that can significantly impact your career is to learn in public. So document everything you learn in public. Uh, Tweet it out, post on LinkedIn, write a blog post of what you have learned and how you are contributing to open source. Make it public. And people often confuse contributing to open source with contributing code. And more often, students and new developers think that they are not skilled enough to contribute code. They are still learning programming, and they don't have uh, any opportunity to contribute to open source. So that is not true. So you can make non-code contributions to open source as well. And I think that non-code contributions can often be more valuable than contributing code. So what are these non-code contributions? This could be writing. So writing involves writing technical documentation, writing blog post, writing content for social media promotion, uh, and so on. So if you are interested in writing, if you have a knack for writing, you can definitely contribute to open source projects as a writer. And this is something that most open source projects severely lack, because most open source projects will have a lot of code contributors who are too close to the project to realize that they don't have adequate documentation. So this is definitely an area you can be impactful. And if you are a designer, there are even more ways to contribute. You can create artworks for promoting the project in social media. You can create icons, logos. You can even create a design palette and let's say a design style guide that can help the project. So you can help by making the design of the project much better. You can make it consistent. You can create artworks to promote the project and so on. And an underrated way to contribute to open source is by being a tester or a user of the project. So there are a lot of open source projects, and most of us will have been using at least one project uh, in our everyday life. So what you can do is you can become a really picky or a really needy user. You can report bugs, you can report issues, user experience issues, you can uh, request for new features, you can say what works, you can say what doesn't work, and you can even sign up for alpha and beta testing. So this puts you directly in the project pipeline. So you will be the feedback loop for developers and other contributors who are working directly on the project. And this feedback is quite valuable, and this helps defining project roadmap and defining features. So this definitely helps. And if you are a seasoned contributor, if you are a seasoned developer, and if you are looking to contribute to open source, you can use your expertise by mentoring other contributors. So if you are highly skilled in a particular programming language but you haven't contributed to open source before, maybe you can share your knowledge to other new contributors, and you can do this by doing pull request reviews, helping with the architecture design of new features, and so on. And the final way to do non-code contribution is to by being an organizer or a community manager. So what an organizer or a community manager does is they manage how the community and how the contributors surrounding the project functions. So they are in charge of hosting meetings, hosting other events, ensuring that the contributors are uh, they have what they need to contribute, and ensuring in basically ensuring that the community remains healthy and the project is thriving. So this is also a great way to contribute to open source. So making your first contribution. So we have learned that that open source contribution is beneficial, and different ways you can contribute. So how do you go about and make your first contribution? So find projects that you are interested in. Most of us will be contributing to open source on our free time, or that may not be our primary job. So it is important that you find your projects that you are interested in, maybe in the projects that you have already been using or the skills you want to learn. So if you are interested in learning about cloud native stuff, you better contribute to some projects that are working on the cloud native ecosystem or the cloud native platforms. And the next step is to learn the skills needed. So this may take some time, and this will definitely help you make better contributions. So you can do this iteratively. You can learn skills as you need it, and you can go you can keep progressing. And once you found the project, and once you are comfortable with the skill, you can join the community. There will usually be a Slack channel, a Discord server, or at least a mailing list where the community comes and discuss about the project. So you can join the community. And of course, most open source projects will have a contributing guideline, and you can go through the contributing guideline and make sure that you follow their code of conduct, and make sure that you follow their process while contributing. And there are always good first issues. So there will be issues that are tagged good first issues on platforms like GitHub. and most open source projects use this. So these issues are aimed at newcomers to lower the barrier to contribute, and you can find and fix those issues as well. So how do you level up from making contributions, and so how do you level up to improve your skills and improve the impact open source has on your career? And uh, so with time, your quality of contributions and the quantity of your contributions will be better. So the more you get involved with the project, the more context you develop around the project and the community, and you will be able to make better contributions, and you can find more ways to contribute. So one of the ways is to be a project manager. So once you have a lot of context on what the project is and what the project does, you can become a project manager, and you can try to organize things, you can triage issues, you can facilitate pull request reviews and all sort of things. And a step after the contributor in open source projects is usually a maintainer. So do things that a maintainer is expected to do, and try to uh, try to level up as a maintainer. And the most important thing you should do is to pay it forward. Help people who are starting out in your open source community. Try to mentor them, share your experience, and help them with their contributions. And uh, can open source be your career? So open source has definitely a potential to become careers. As I mentioned at the start, there are uh, there are there is a huge capital funding influx in open source projects, and it is definitely becoming more and more sustainable. So there is definitely an opportunity for a career in open source. So you can build, scale, and start monetizing your own open source project. So if you have an open source project, you can try and think of ways with which you can monetize. There are a lot of successful open source business models, like the one used by Red Hat, where uh, they offer the software for free, but they pay for service, but the users have to pay for support. And there are other business models like open core model, where the core of the software is open source, and you provide a cloud offering on top of it. And another way is to work for companies which builds open source projects. So there are a lot of companies who build open core projects, and you can start contributing to those projects and eventually work at those companies, and as an open source contributor, as someone, as a software engineer working on open source things. And you can also get sponsored to work in open source. So if the project you are working has a lot of users, uh, you can ask users to sponsor your project, so that you can work on it full time, or uh, devote a significant part of your day to work on that open source project. And contributing to open source comes with a lot, definitely comes with some challenges, and facing these challenges head on is really important. And one of the things I found most helpful was that to realize that everyone faced the same challenges, and this is only natural, and these challenges can easily be overcome. So you are opening your code for the entire world to see. Your If when you make a pull request, your code is open for everyone to see. So you definitely have a fear that people might judge you, people might judge your code, and which in turn, like, you might think that it may reflect who you are, and it may reflect your skill. So there is definitely a fear of judgment, and everyone, when starting out, everyone will face this issue. And it might be hard to choose a project, so you are devoting a lot of your time to contribute to a particular project. So it might be difficult to decide which project you want to contribute. So as I mentioned earlier, like, finding a project that really interests you, that you really want to work on, is important. And there is an issue with aligning your work and personal goals. So you will have a lot of things outside contributing to open source. You will have your day job, you will have your own personal life. So uh, coming into terms with why you are contributing to open source and aligning with your professional and personal goals is definitely a challenge and something you need to think about. And finally, you have the imposter syndrome, the feeling which you think that everyone else is so far ahead and you are still trying to play catch up. And this definitely happens to everyone regardless of whether they are open source contributors or not, especially in the field of technology and engineering. You definitely face the imposter syndrome. You kind of think that you are not good enough to do what you are doing. So face these challenges head on. And if you have questions, I think we have a couple of minutes left. Uh, you can ask it now, or you can hit me up on Twitter, and I try to post content on open source in my Twitter, so you can reach out to me as well to continue discussions. So Agnes asked, how can you find contribution requests for non-code contributions like writing and testing? Is there a way to filter for this? So if the open source project is relatively big, they will have separate labels for, let's say, documentation and unit testing and all sort of things. So if the project is big enough, you can try to sort with these labels. And if the project is relatively small, you can try to identify these issues yourself. So when you are starting on a new project, you will most likely go through the documentation, and when you do that, you will likely find issues with the documentation. So you can raise issues and fix them yourself. So when starting out. So Jessica asked, when did you start to feel like you knew what we're doing in OSS? Uh, I still don't know what I'm doing. That's something I think we will never we'll never come to comprehend. So I still feel like I'm an imposter some days, but I try to uh, justify myself by looking at my past contributions. Yeah. And how is your work reviewed for accuracy? So open source projects usually have a lot of reviewers. So when you make a pull request, it is public, and people from the community, the maintainers of the project, will all come in and review the pull request. So I guess it is reviewed very well. There will be a lot of eyes on the review, and we also have projects usually have CI checks. So with things like GitHub Actions being the norm, there are definitely it has become very easy to uh, run continuous integration tests. So there are definitely unit tests and integration tests running on all your changes, and they try to catch a lot of bugs. So yeah. And Aditya Joshi asks, can you please tell about LFX mentorship? So LFX mentorship is an open source mentorship program by the Linux Foundation. So Linux Foundation has a lot of projects it is hosting. So every year they have I think 3 different cohorts where students or new developers can uh, come in and sign up to work on a particular feature or work on a particular project within that particular project. And the Next Foundation also pays a stipend to the mentees, and they will have an assigned mentor. So this allows them to work on these projects full time or part time along with their college curriculum or their uh, uh, their daily work. So yeah, it is a good program. So if you are interested in open source, you can definitely check out the program. There are a lot of projects, and I think a cohort just started recently. And yeah, I was also a mentee for the Linux Foundation mentorship program, and like it definitely helped. It definitely helped my career and like to like it paved the way to work full time in open source.